Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike. Morning.
Happy Tuesday, gentlemen.
I was freaking out there.
We're back.
We are back.
I'm back, right? After a long vacation, back to the work stream,
There we go.
back to the work life.
Happy New Year. Welcome to the new year.
I know.
Happy
We're on
New Year.
2 years of doing the podcast.
2022 is officially in the books. Now you're going to struggle for the next 3 months, figuring out how to write what year you're in
2023.
and getting the right year right. That's what I do every year. Every year. It's like the
Without
first
fail.
month and a half. I'm like, oh, shoot, it's not that year anymore. I forgot about it.
This is also the time of year when your technical debt comes due in your reports.
Oh, yes.
For those who put those filters. where it's
Yep.
like, you had to put-
Oh, yeah.
Good. The easy
That is a
button,
good
right?
catch.
Where you're
The
just like,
easy
oh,
button.
it'll be fine. I'll just
maybe
I'll filter it
maybe
for
it's
this
in Power-
year. No problem.
Maybe it's in Power
year to date,
Query,
hard coded.
maybe
Yep.
it's in DAX, maybe it's in the visual. Your technical debt comes due.
So
That's
the
a good
BI
call
ticketing
out.
systems are going to be lit up today.
Yeah.
Data's gone. No data. I can't
No
see
data.
it. We have to go re-engineer all your data
Yeah,
stuff.
take that note just to make sure.
Yeah.
I know who would do that right.
I'm just gonna write that down just to make sure we didn't accidentally do that myself.
You want to use any hard coding, guys? 2023.
Start hard coding now for the next year. You got a whole year to fix it. We can wait a whole another year now. That's funny. That's so on point, though.
Man, the first few years doing Power BI, I remember, I don't know why I did this, but it was probably like the first 2015, and I think I did all the visuals by the year, and like a dummy every year or like the next year, I'm like, I'll just update like each page. I'm like, oh man, there's got to be a better way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's a better way.
There is a better way.
It's a much better way. It's also known as the good way, the best practice way.
I would agree. Excellent. So a couple introduction pieces here. For those of you who have been following the podcast for a while, we've been pushing some good events, both virtual and in person. So there is an event coming up on March 6th to the 10th. It's the Global Power BI Summit. That would be globalpowerbisummit.com, where you can get a virtual ticket and listen to a bunch of really smart people talk about Power BI things. And you can also hear from three lousy people. That would be Tommy, Seth, and myself, who will also be there speaking at the event, and you can listen to us as well. If you can't get enough of us on the podcast, you can attend on the Global Summit as well. So here's the link in the chat window, and just in case you wanted it, it'll be in the description for those who are listening online. Also, we have a discount code for SQL Bits coming up here on March 14th through 18th. You can visit SQLBits.com. And for 5% off and checkout, you can use Power BI Tips 5. Anyway, just want to throw those things in there, and we appreciate everyone and their listenership. Excellent.
Make sure you do your passports too. So,
Yeah,
that was this weekend. My wife was like, "You have your passports? You know, like you have it all." I'm like, "Yeah, I did it like 10 years ago." So we're fine.
Oh no, 10 years ago, they're done now.
Oh no,
you gotta get another one.
Yeah, so luckily I was in the right thing where I could do it online, expedited, but I was like a bit of a stress kind of thing. So, but it's all taken care of. But I mean, 10 years ago when you saw, and when was it? 13. I remember 2023 seemed like it would never happen. But here we are. So, but no, we're all good. So if you're listening to SQL Bits, no legal issues here.
Tommy's coming, and you won't be arrested when he gets there.
Is that a cannoli in your pocket?
You're not going to get turned around after the 8-hour flight. Oh,
right.
Yeah. Thanks for visiting our small cubicle. Get back on the airplane and go home.
That'd be crazy. So I don't have any other kind of initial announcements. Any other announcement things? Tommy, you were doing a blog. Actually, just kidding. There is one more. Tommy, you were doing something around the scanner API. Want to talk about that?
Yeah. So last year I launched a Power BI Scanner API solution off the weight of two other people who use Power Automate to basically build, and it would post the scan and like ask the scan request and then bring everything back in JSON. The problem was if you have thousands of data sets,
super large
hundreds
organization.
of data sets. Yeah, large. Like some of the JSON, it wouldn't actually like write back. It would add too many characters, so it just seemed to cause a few issues. So there are a few other solutions that came out earlier this year on using like the activity API to pull in data flows and data marts. I'm like, man, wouldn't it be so much easier if you could just actually do a post in Power Query? So actually the whole new V2 solution, the whole thing is actually lives in data flows. There's no Power Automate, there's no JSON.
Wow.
And what's really cool is the first data flow, the only thing it does is just sends a request, because you have to send the request, and the only thing it returns is the scan ID. So whenever you refresh it, it's a new scan ID. The second data flow, it basically just pulls in whatever that scan ID's metadata is.
Okay.
So why would you? And you have to do it in 2, because every time you pull 1. So, but it's been working great for me. So check it out. See if it solves that problem, because there's a lot you can do with that.
Tommy will throw the link in the description in the chat window here, and we'll make sure we snag this link as well and put it in the description. That way you can catch out the project that Tommy's been working on, and if you have a monitoring or needed to do some monitoring pieces, you'll be able to go grab that information as well. Excellent. I'd highly recommend getting involved with some of the monitoring things. I think it's the more and more I've been doing like projects around just Power BI things in general, there are so many different things that teams need to be aware of what's going on in their environment. Monitoring is becoming more and more important to me.
Yeah.
Anyways,
true. There's a New Year comment kind of in the chat that made me chuckle, because I had one of those old man moments yesterday. So Donald Parrish says, I remember reading Kinsman sci-fi in the 70s when 1999 was far future. And I was going to type in like, we try to hide our age on the interwebs, Donald, and it just turned into a smiley face instead of that and the smiley face. But this is like the distortion of time, I think, year to year, because my wife and I were cleaning up like our basement yesterday, and I picked up this old award I got long ago, long old company, and it was from 2004. I'm like, oh, look, honey, like this is almost 10 years old.
A relic.
Yep.
Seth, 2004. It's almost 20 years old. And I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on.
Yeah, exactly.
It didn't seem that long ago. Another year in the books.
Something else my kids had said, something about and I remembered something, I don't know, in the early 2000s. I had said, oh, that was 2000s. You guys were just like barely being born. And my wife's like, none of the kids were born yet. I was like, what? Oh, all right. Well, okay then. So apparently I'm doing the same thing as well. Maybe it happens around New Year's. You reminisce a bit more. I don't know.
2000, like when we were born. Right.
Yeah.
Right?
I was talking with the kids.
When I was, you
guys remember Y2K, right?
Yeah, it's all good.
Boy, oh boy.
Crazy. I think it's the range of time. Like, again, I got married in 2013, and when we did the passport, I literally thought to myself, 2023, that may never happen. That was how far away it is. Yep. And now 2033, I'm already like, I should already be planning for this. That's not that far away. So we're just getting older, man.
So,
all right, on to the topic for today.
New topic.
All right, enough reminiscing. This is making me feel old again.
Yeah.
Again.
Moving on.
More old. All right, let's jump into the topic today. So the topic for today will be an interesting topic. I think this will be really good. Do you use, or should we use, Power BI subscriptions more? Subscribing to things. So I guess we should kind of just overall talk about what things can you use in the PowerBI.com service to do subscribing things. Like, what does subscribing do for you in PowerBI.com? So Tommy will quickly run over to ChatGPT and ask the question. And he was sending me links today or yesterday, screenshots. He's like, "This thing's amazing. I don't have to do anything anymore. I'm gonna write a blog every day now."
It did a freaking agenda for us. I said, right, why should I use subscriptions? Wrote me a whole thing. I'm like, all right, well, my job's done.
Write me a script for a podcast that talks about nothing but Power BI.
That one,
it's like ... nothing returns.
in that reply though, you could tell it verbatim. It just pulled from websites, right?
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
oh yeah,
totally.
here's the Power BI report subscriptions, bullet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, exactly right.
Wasn't
It was
nearly as
literally reading from their website, which is good though. It's kind of nice. Anyways, let's go through. Let's talk about different subscriptions. Give me some subscriptions across the Power.com service that you can jump onto.
So it's the brainchild, or at least it's a child of Paginated Report subscriptions, and there are two ways to primarily do subscriptions. You can either do dashboards, which I don't think anyone does anymore, or you can actually create subscriptions in a report, and you can set up uh, whether every time the data set refreshes on a weekly, monthly, daily basis, and basically allowing a user or multiple users to basically get an email every day of a PDF, an image, and a direct link to that report and the updated changes. So few huge benefits for this is one, you're delivering the data to the user, and then also they can see what that data was at that point in time. If something were to change in the database, if something were to change in the actual report itself, that's going to basically be a static image of what that report looked like. And Microsoft's been building and developing a lot of major updates to this, where if I had filters applied on the page, whether it was something I drilled into or whatever, that's almost like a personal bookmark, that can actually be the subscription that's sent to users. Before, other users had to set up their subscription themselves, but now we can actually set it up on behalf of users. So that's kind of the general idea of it. And then I don't know if you have anything to add.
I want to throw in here another one here. There's also this idea of alerts as well. And I was kind of curious if you were thinking, would an alert be a part of a subscription? Is that something else you would kind of lump into that topic?
No. I would not, but it is the same in the context that an email gets sent.
And that's kind of where I was thinking.
Right.
So I would, again, I'm going to probably go a little bit more like surfacey here on some things, right? I feel like the subscribing to report, yeah, makes sense. And I think also, Tommy, the email gets sent out when the report is data has been refreshed.
Do as soon as the data refreshes.
Yeah, so you have settings in there that lets you like immediately know when the data is current, and you can go look at the report.
Right.
I think this is also meeting one of those needs where people were always like, oh, I like all my reports emailed to me, and I just hate having Excel files just show up in my inbox of data that's old, and I have to collect it, and a pain.
Yeah, before we get to opinions, I think let's talk about the
sorry, I'm getting too far down there.
The high level, because I don't think I can walk back once we go down that road.
That's true. That's a true statement.
What are some common use cases you guys see in reporting subscriptions? And we can keep alerts at the periphery, but I think they're the only thing they have in common is that they get sent in an email form, right? Or a notification is sent out. But for like generate me the report, have it sent to me in my inbox, what are common use cases or areas where you see folks using this feature?
And I think this is like more of that I need to look at things at a glance level, or executives kind of looking at things, right? I need to have this report on my desk every morning. I need to see the information. It's kind of something that's there. And the company culture is that such you're consistently using email as like your main medium. That's what you came from. So I think this is a feature gap fill for existing software that may have been replaced. And instead of just clicking the link or going to Power BI, the app on your phone, to go look at the real-time report, this is something that needs to be, brought to someone's desk. So that's one use case I think I would see being used there. You guys?
Go ahead, Tommy.
I think a big use case that I see is not so much just a summary of the report, is more unique reports where it's either new data that they want to be displayed quickly, whether it's the leads of the day, the leads in the last 7 days, whatever something is on a very recent basis. So it's the same idea, but we've actually built reports kind of almost specifically designed for subscriptions, where it was showing much recent data where they can get that snapshot of who those people were. Again, still limitations with that, but at the same time, obviously you have people who want to see things on a daily basis, but it's what they want to see when they open up that email.
Yeah, the interesting thing in both of your comments to me is the same thing I've encountered, which is you're saying a use case is somebody wants this feature request, right? Like they're saying, I want this delivered to my inbox, not necessarily there's value behind you sending it to my inbox, right? Like it's just, this is the way reporting, stock paginated reports got sent out in the past, right?
Like SSRS, that's like what you did.
Right. Predominantly, that was because it took a long time for the report to generate, potentially, right? Or you'd have to log in, you'd have to go through a series of, get to the report, add in the filters, and up until only recently, right? You still had to do that in Power BI, right? Like it was only recently that you were able to save your filter in your own subscription.
Yes.
But ultimately, it's mostly that's how consumers were generating or getting reports generated, because email was the only medium pretty much that allowed you to communicate with your coworkers. There was no Teams, there was no Slack, there was no intercommunication, right? So the use case is interesting to me because it's just, that's the way I had it. So I want it. I want it to show up in my email.
That's actually a good point. Because again,
go ahead, Tommy.
So that was a good point, because a lot of the times a lot of the requests I used to get, Mary mentioned in the beginning too, was, can I just get the CSV emailed to me daily? Because that's also what they were used to. Again, back in the day, if you wanted to get the data, you had to do that janky SSRS report where you had to do the filters applied, wait for it to load, and then you had to download it anyways if you didn't have the necessary report. So people are just like, well, I guess I just want that in Power BI. That's always a fun conversation. Like, well, we can't necessarily do a CSV right away. But it's that same idea. I love that because it's very much what people were used to. And I won't expand too much, but that technology that was available at the time, it made the most sense.
So I'm going to give a huge credit to Dan Meisner, because this is a concept that he's given to me. And as we talked about this, I'm like, yeah, this makes total sense. As we look at technology and how technology has changed how people interact with computers, previously on in the internet world of things, right? You'd had a secretary who would write emails for everyone, or memos, right? Back earlier in the days, you'd have someone who was in charge of sending out memos and getting information to people. You centralize that into a single person. Now, if you look at how many executive assistants are around a company, right? They are no longer, or very few of them are you have an engineering team, you have a company, you don't have secretaries for the entire engineering department. Again, this is old school days where you would send, you'd have drawings or, documents or things that need to get sent out to people. You go to someone, the executive assistant, they would write it up, send out the email, and then that would get sent out. But now technology and the software for emails is so easy to use. Everyone writes their own emails now. So the majority of a company, and there's probably some exceptions where certain people are getting their emails watched by, administrative assistants or something like that. But you look at no one now has the number of assistants helping administrate things in an organization. There's less and less. More people are doing their own things. So all that work is now pushed down to the employees. I think this is the same trend we're seeing now with data to some degree, right? Before, you'd have someone doing a whole bunch of SSR reports that was handled by another team. There was a centralized space for all this data stuff, and you had to subscribe to it and just send me my stuff in my inbox. We're now looking where the technology is getting so good that everyone can just do this. So it's everyone now can write their own emails instead of having to go through a certain person. So I'm like, that analogy holds so true, because the technology literally is changing how we operate, what we do on a day-to-day basis. It's now fundamentally letting us do our own things. And I think subscriptions is one of these parts that was previously kind of around with other data tools, SSRS. We need to retain that functionality, because we're not used to just going to PowerBI.com, just opening the app. There's a culture shift that's kind of a gap that's being bridged there until people get comfortable with the new technology wave.
I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I also feel that the secretary and memo days were a little bit before people started receiving SSRS inbox subscriptions, right?
Well, yes, but I'm just saying, it's a parallel though. Look at that, what it was doing then, and look where we're at now.
I think the pace of communication, right, and information gathering and passing, right, in organizations, exponentially different, right? But I'll withhold, but I posit a question, which is, are SSRS reports or these subscription models of having something emailed to your inbox an artifact of an old way of reporting, right? And we can get into that further down the road or
Oh,
in the
that's a good question.
discussion.
Yeah.
But you could probably tell where I'm leaning. Anyway, what like in current state Power BI, right? Like, are there any limitations with report subscriptions? Right? Like, I think originally when it came out, you were able to go directly and just subscribe to a report, and then only recently now they allowed us to save the filter, which I think is much more useful. If I'm going to save a subscription to a report, it's not just an easy link anymore, because
Right.
typically that's what it would have been, is just
Yes.
like, hey, do you remember where Power BI is? Here's an email that says go click on the
Yep.
link and get taken there.
Yes.
And here's a pretty picture of like an overall report. To now, hey, you can set up your custom filters to have a snapshot or the data you want to see in reports that are now more specific, the way a targeted, paginated report would have been, right? Where before it just kind of was that link, I think, because there's just so much data that typically with Power BI reporting, it's like, here's all the data. Now you go filter it down and use it the way you want to. So I think that improvement to it would enhance the use of subscriptions. But do you guys see any other limitations from old to new?
Not more limitations, but I would say, I mean, another one I will add in here, like you're talking about Power BI reports and dashboards emailing you or subscription based. I also want to throw in here, there's definitely like probably a clear use case for any of the paginated reports as well.
Mhm.
And to your point, though, I think a lot of this value, it's like, again, going back to the just email me the data, just email me the table of information I need to look at every day. I think there's really two purposes behind why that was occurring. One was someone needed a snapshot of that data as of that day. So I've actually had use cases where people are like, I need the data emailed to me every day because I need to look back. A customer request comes in. I need to look at some data. There's some shipping information in there, whatever that may be. There's a state and time of when something occurs, and they want to go back to that state and time of that data. Now, I would argue people think that need is more important than it is. So I think there's an overemphasis on I need to see all the historical versions of the data, but in reality, we really don't. Kind of thing.
But even when you say that, and what's interesting to me, because Tommy said that earlier too, is have you ever run across somebody who's like, hold on, I think something changed in the data. Let me go peel through all of my emails and then find the report that was sent to me, and I'll show you exactly where like that went off the rails. Have you ever had somebody do that?
3 times.
I've had a couple. I've had a couple when, to me, this is occurring when the person was interacting with like a direct customer, right? You're like the liaison to the customer side of things, right? You're tracking certain things for the customer. You're having that you're managing that relationship directly to them, of supply chain management type stuff. So to me, that's when stuff potentially goes off the rails. You have to, talk to the customer, explain what's going on, and that view or that lens of data that shows you that historical view of what happened is important for those kind of stories and conversations. However, I would say though, in those cases, what I think I would, if I look at that situation now, what really needs to be happening is, to me, that's a deficiency on the data warehouse and the report build, honestly. So my opinion on that one is, when you have that kind of need, that just means whatever you're doing in the data world of whatever that backend support system, where however you're looking at the data, you just needed a better way of storing all the historical records every day. So that way the user can go back to the report and just pick, hey, I want to see this report as of this date. Boom, done. Don't need the email anymore. So that's where I would, I would say there's probably a lack of design on the BI or the data engineering side that was not accounted for when they started loading that data in.
Yeah, I mean, the only use cases that we saw was, and I think it's really rare, it's more rare, it's not necessarily what subscriptions were for, is something majorly changed in the database. And one morning, there must have been a change from the DBAs, and they're like, I know the number, it looks like it went down 30% from yesterday. I was like, and they showed me, and they showed me the email subscriptions. So something we actually uncovered, like there's some data source that was not going actually into the warehouse at the time that just stopped that morning or like the night before. So, but again, that's not.
It was still loading data from 2022. It wasn't loading data from the next
DVA
year.
put a static 2020. but I wouldn't say that's why you use report subscriptions. I think that I don't want to say struggling. Maybe I'm going to play a little bit of a devil's advocate here because I'll state my my side of this is I think report subscriptions, I never cared for it because I always wanted to point users towards the report.
Agreed.
But as we're exploring this today, I think like exploring like, well, why do the users actually want them? And I think they can be helpful in more situations than we think in terms of think about all the people who've requested the report subscriptions and in your organization. It's usually someone who like where was their knowledge level or their skill level in Power BI, just from a consumer point of view. I really actually, as thinking about this, I think there is an adoption strategy here, a grow up story for report subscriptions, where you're giving the data to the user. There's to the point about the technology, like yes, we may not, we can write our own emails now, but we also have more websites and portals and links than ever before to get to everything. There's not usually, you have here's your data, here's your apps, here's your sales leads, and there are all these different links people have to find. I don't think I can assume that everyone is data savvy or no, I'll just go to Power BI to find what I need.
I agree with that too.
Yeah,
I think there's like a level. To me, I'm hearing like there's a side story here, a side quest that's occurring where I want you to send me the data and have it produced to me so I can keep it and do some sort of side analysis here on whatever those files that I'm getting are.
Well, because I get overwhelmed going to the service. I want to know where to find this.
Mhm.
And I think it's helping guide people towards this is the reports that we have, and also encouraging to go to the report itself.
How? If they don't know where to go, like generate a report, like you're saying you're subscribing other people to those reports?
The people who ask for those reports, no, we're not necessarily subscribing to someone random. But
if they don't know where to go, how are they getting a subscription emailed to them?
I can subscribe them to it.
Okay, so
they have
that's
access.
You're subscribing people
Yes.
to those reports.
Yeah.
Right.
Tommy's adding them to the subscription and they're getting their data.
Okay.
But again, I think it boils down to like the idea either you don't trust the data or the data warehouse you have today currently isn't set up in a way that you can look at the data historically. And I think it's also talks about your data culture a little bit, right?
But I don't know if I necessarily agree with that because like people aren't validating it. Like the only like that use case that Tommy had where somebody's like, yo, it dipped 30% is because those are people that are looking at that report every day.
Mm-hmm.
It is not because it's getting emailed to their inbox.
Agreed. I'm just saying, like, I think where I'm talking about the use case is people are getting emailed these files and they're doing some offline ad hoc analysis around that, but they don't feel comfortable in Power BI Desktop. They're not willing to build stuff there, or there's no tooling that's given from the company to let people do anything more than just playing around with Excel. So people are starting to do copy pasting data from Excel sheets to get to their answers at points in time.
How would they do that on a PDF?
I don't know if you'd even use the PDF. I mean, that one just, I don't even know why you'd want to get stuff in PDF form other than you're like, I need this information so I can screenshot it, stick it in my PowerPoint slides, and then send it to the customer.
No, I disagree with that. I think you think about the range of skill or the data savviness of the whole organization, from the user who they just may not be great in Power BI. I don't think we can expect everyone off the onset. I think I'm talking about more of the earlier stages of adoption of Power BI to just expect people to know what to do, how to navigate, no matter how much training you have out there. People have other things to do. Their job is not to be an expert in navigating the Power BI portal. That's our job, but they're not required to do that, especially on the onset. And as we're delivering more data to more people, those new people, I think the report subscription is a great gateway towards here's what's available to you. Here's what's important to you. Again, I wouldn't say that's always where you stay, but I don't think you can just say if you have a report subscription, it means you don't trust the data or that.
No, I know. That's it's a trust thing. I think it's just more of a, people are comfortable doing data manipulation and data engineering in their own space, right? And it's easy for people just to get files sent to them, and then they can edit or manipulate or do whatever they want to do, other ad hoc offline analysis around that stuff as well. And I think that really just speaks to what's the culture of your company, how data literate are people, how data engineering savvy are they? And again, I'll go back to the email analogy, right? Previously, everyone like we're looking at a world now where a lot of people do a lot of data engineering inside Excel. And what we're saying is the technology is ever increasing. Power BI is free to go download and get on your machine, or tools are becoming more powerful. So as you're getting these more powerful tools that are given directly to you, the capabilities of the individual have more room to grow or to do different things than they would do previously just by getting emailed Excel files. That's all I'm trying to say.
You keep saying the Excel files, but report subscriptions don't do Excel files.
Don't they do CSVs?
No.
Paginated.
Paginated does.
But
that's what I'm. Yeah.
Okay. So sure. And but like I'm speaking specifically towards our Power BI reports and moving that way. Yeah, the CSVs are one thing, and maybe those are two different discussions.
Sure,
okay.
Maybe.
So, okay, that would be weird to get a PDF of a paginated report. Yeah, that makes sense as we go through that. But I'm speaking on the PDF side, and I think that's a whole different user. That's a completely different persona.
I would agree with that one.
So do you guys? I'm going to back up. So Tommy, you shared a little of your feelings on the subject, but do you guys consider the lack of data-driven subscriptions a limitation in the current subscription framework?
The lack of data-driven subscriptions.
Yeah, I mean, you have a couple links where I think Dan English was the guy who used Power Automate to go replicate what we used to be able to do in Paginated with just a simple dialogue click through, where you could have data elements of a report. So the filter itself dictate which users, and then you could have an email list table, et cetera, where it would automatically shoot out the report with the filters applied, right? The email blast of reporting, right? Essentially what it was in reporting services. Do you guys consider that a limitation?
Well, I don't think it's a limitation. Maybe what you're saying, again, maybe I'm misreading your question here. If I'm email blasting out a bunch of things with information or data, maybe that's just because I'm trying to skirt licensing to some degree. Because
in this case, you can't, right? Because there's no way to do it. You actually have to up your licensing.
Well, if
you're doing Power Automate.
But do you have to have a license to be able to? Do you have to have a license to get something subscribed to you? Like, do you need to be a pro user to get something emailed to you?
The way with Power Automate, you could technically circumvent that.
So part of what this, I think, again, I'm not saying I recommend it, but part of this might be hey, we don't want to buy a bunch of Power BI. We'll just send you the data. And so here you go. Here's your emailed stuff. We've been emailing you stuff from the old server a long time ago. Here's the new stuff. We're just going to send you an email on it. And that's what you get. I don't know.
So technically that would make sense to have a license if it was a Power BI report, but Paginated wouldn't require it because it could just be an Excel file.
Could be just the way. Or PDFs would be like, here's your data.
Right.
We're not willing to give you access to the report itself at all. Here's the paginated report for your lens of what you need to see, and this is your daily. Here's your sales daily, right? Here's the goal of the company. Here's where you sit. You can't change it. You're not adjusting it. That's what you get. That's your data point.
And Mike, let me ask, what do you think's used more frequently, the paginated report subscriptions right now, or the normal report subscriptions in a Power BI?
I don't think paginated reports is used as much, anyways. Period. I don't think it's utilized as much as it could be. One, it's kind of a newer feature of Power BI. Two, I think when you go to Data Hub and you actually start clicking on columns of things, so you can see what data is inside the data model. I think as soon as you have the ability to add filters to those pages, you'll get a lot more quote unquote built-in service paginated reports. I think that'll be a lot more utilized. But right now, I don't see paginated reports being used very much at all, other than like, hey, I need you to dump a table of data. And that's usually when I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to give you that in a Power BI report because it's just going to be slow. And I had to give you the report and you have to click export on that table. I just don't like that experience. People just want, again, I think that's a story or a use case around, I don't know what I want. I just want to see all the data. That's an access to data issue, as opposed to I need insights on data, which I feel is much more report based.
Which one do you think would be used more if they did apply the filters, the normal report subscription or the build a table in Power BI?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Which would once they come out with the feature to add filters to
yes.
what do you think is going to be if you were to look at the numbers? Which one would be used more frequently across the board?
I think as soon as you have paginated report capabilities like filtering on a table of data that's inside Power BI, I think you're going to see the subscriptions for tables of data dumping out increase drastically. It's going to be a much larger use case for where people versus email and reports, right? So I guess the delineation here is to some degree, right? When I start looking at the report side of things, everyone's got to have a pro subscription. The report's got to be kind of like, ready to go so I could get the email of the PDF or whatever that is, right? In anything that's PDFing to you or getting you links to the direct report, I'm expecting you go to powerbi.com or the insights are already on the page. It's done. Right. Like literally I can look, it's a glance and I have the action item right there. So I think there is a use case for glance at data, take action, because the design of the report is such that it makes sense. Manager level reports or performance reports, you have budgets or you have goals you're trying to hit and you're trying to see how close you match to those goals, right? That's the kind of report you want to look at. When you start talking about tables and things and in access to data, that's when I think that being able to build a full paginated report inside the service, I think that's going to be a turning point for a lot of people where access to data becomes solvable with only the service. I'm not sure if I make myself clear.
They have access to data in the paginated, like they would just have to go generate it.
Yeah, correct. Right. Yes. I mean, I really like the experience of being able to drag. I've used it a number of times. I don't know what's in this data set. I'm going to go look at it. I just grab a couple columns. Boom. Mm-hmm. Oh, I can start seeing okay. I can see it. The only downside of that is right now in the service, you don't really have a lens of which I can see the data model view, right? So I don't really know exactly which tables tie to which tables. But if you add descriptions to things, you can see the description of a column. So you can somewhat document the model in its current form and let people see a bit more of what the model is doing because you've added descriptions, the columns or whatever. That can help people understand how to pull columns together to get access to data.
So I'm a little all over the board on this one just because of the different topics, right? So if we're talking about alerts, it makes total sense to me.
So to me, this is where I feel the value of this really comes from.
Send me something that is different, right? Like
yes.
I'm going to set up something
where
outside the norms, you're going to shoot me an email that says you need to go look at this report because
that's what I like. Yes.
Tommy, to your point, shoot me an alert when, my overall numbers drop by 10% or more, right?
Yeah.
Like, whoa, hey,
time to look at
wrong.
This.
Like, go check it out.
Mm-hmm.
Personal subscriptions. Okay, you probably can convince me that there are use cases that I might not be familiar with where people can go out and have them subscribe to a report because it's easier to get them in their email box. I was going to say I hate them straight across the board. I hate subscriptions, but I don't I think that's contextual. And that context is around large generations of emailed reports. In Power BI, coming from the SSRS world, I was actually really upset that there was no way to do data-driven subscriptions because it was an easy button for creating a report and just having it sent out to the masses. But what you find is as you drive further into reporting and diving into the business and figuring out what people are using, you realize that the vast majority of those reports are like being sent to emails that no longer exist. People aren't opening them. They're not looking at them. They're not, it's just information waste, which means subscriptions in general are the virtuous waste of reporting, right?
I agree with you to some degree.
I think people request a carte blanche, like send them to my entire division because they've had them that way in the past.
Yes.
I think it's the easy button for having something show up in your inbox as opposed to utilizing and using systems that are so much better. And there are so many other solutions that we as BI professionals can develop. And I'm not talking about like, oh, you're down here on level 5 of data culture and like everything's humming. Like I would argue that there are like 3 easy things to get you into position where shooting people to a location for an app, right, create an experience where people can access the reporting that they need. We talk about this ad nauseum around how do you point people in the right direction. And I would much rather spend a week developing an onboarding thing for my business units and showing them like where to go and how to access information, as opposed to walking through and like creating subscriptions for them. Just show it so it shows up in their inbox. And the other side of that too is email is becoming this like dumping ground of garbage in corporations today. It isn't the only way to communicate. It's like the worst way to communicate nowadays. And it like, so if you think about the systems and all the things that have to generate these reports on a daily basis to be sent out, and this is where the large big bucket stuff comes from. I'm glad now that they didn't create an easy button for data-driven subscriptions, because I think like you would have crippled your premium capacities, because all you would have is like just this engine running the entire time, shooting out emails to people that were never referencing or looking at them, which comes back to, I think, one of my key points, which would be you have no idea who's actively engaging in your reports. You just know a bunch of people subscribe to it. That is so significantly different than understanding that people have ceased to use your report and it just stopped working, or it's broken and you need to go fix it. Like, active people in a system of reporting lets you know where and what reporting is healthy and being serviceable to the organization and what is not anymore, right? That ebb and flow. And we've talked about that. And even where you like your scanner API, if you're just sending me a subscription so I can say I had the number sent to me, as opposed to actually doing the due diligence and looking at the report on a daily basis or validating my numbers, where I'm getting tracked that I'm actually keeping track of this number, those are two completely different things. And ownership is taken out of the whole equation
huge
when
here.
all you're doing is saying somebody subscribed to this report.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that one. And I think to your point here, I think the more actionable thing of these two options, and we're talking about subscriptions, but I would lump in alerting into some sort of subscription, right? I need to be alerted when something meets a certain threshold. And I've even made reports where I'll do data checks on things, right? And if this number is not 0, someone gets emailed, right? I've done a sum or a total or aggregate or something that's going on where you're actually looking at when something is hitting a threshold and using that as I think to me, that's much more actionable than just, to your point, email is a dumping ground. And imagine, look, all the waste emails you get already, like from stuff just all over the place.
Becomes spam.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that could be different in some organizations, but I don't think so. Like,
I don't think so.
If you look at the number of articles out there of like, how do you manage your email inbox? How do you like not have it just consume every part of your day? There's hundreds, if not thousands, of like, hey, there's different way. Like, ignore your email. It's the waste of your life.
Block out time.
Blah.
Do these
Why
things,
why would I throw what I would deem valuable information into that cesspool?
So I kind of want to wrap both of your guys' thoughts here, because we're talking about the new technology and utilizing that we have available to us now. And I really think the alerts is the evolution of subscriptions here. And finally, like when we're talking about email, we don't have to use email anymore. And there are better ways, especially because we don't have to use dashboards.
That's a good point.
Used to be the only way to do alerts.
Yeah.
My goodness, do you know the capability introducing scorecards? And that capability in
metrics,
Power
right?
Automate, yeah.
Sure.
So if you want to create custom dynamic alerts, data-driven alerts, it's not a dashboard, because no one's using dashboards anymore.
No,
it's
metrics now.
It's metrics. You can create the unique metrics, and they don't have to be towards a goal. It can be whenever it's updated. You can set out an alert, and the bigger part here is, one, it's not just going to email. You can customize the action of how it's going to communicate it. If you need to communicate it to Teams, to Slack.
But that is the key difference between alerts and subscriptions, because a subscription is great. It's new. And the first 7 days, 5 days, 2 weeks, you open that email, and then it becomes old. And then it's just a thing that shows up in your inbox that you never open, as opposed to an alert, which is you never get it until you have to take notice or you want to take notice, right? Significantly different things, right? Like one is, hey, bang, go check, go look at this. It's a big deal. You set up something or someone in your organization set it up in such a way that your attention is needed over here. Because I think that is, to me, the biggest thing is one of the most challenging things to me in business today is focusing your attention on the things that matter, that move the needle, because
Oh boy,
every
here we
single
go.
day you're addressed with a ton of the virtuous waste things or a ton of the things that derail you from your objectives during the day. And email is one of those things that people, I think, just go, including myself, just you have to table it. It's a distraction because if I have a clear objective of the things I need to accomplish today, I can waste half my day every day if I address every email as it comes in. Or if email is only the thing that says, hey, this has to divert your attention today, that becomes valuable to me. That becomes the thing that I'm going to be like, yep, that's what I want to come into my email inbox, is the thing that I would not have seen coming, as opposed to just all of the noise of the day where it's just like, oh, I get the same thing. And in order for me to get value out of it, I need to open it and click into it and go to the same place I would go anyway, which is the report, where if I had that on my agenda to go look at today, I would be already going there, right? Like if it contains information that's going to help me do my job, I'm already going to the report. Why do I need a subscription? Like, and this is where I could say there are use cases where if you personalized a subscription, you created your own filter sets that you could receive data, from a Power BI report, PDF pay, or like whatever. Yes, you could, right? But the general big swath, large email, huge engines generating all of this data for little to no usage is where I just,
But
I'm
I think
glad we're moving away from it. I would
really
push that we really move away from it.
Oh, I like your observation here. That's going like way high level here, right? The challenge for businesses in general, right, is to remove noise and to focus on value, right? There's so much noise that can be ingested with whatever you're working on. That's a challenge. I think companies that can focus through the noise on what is really adding value at the end of the day, that is really impactful. And I think that holds true for emails. That holds true for like your daily tasks. It holds true for like, this is why companies do OKRs. Start from the top down. Here's our main key objectives. Work towards these things. And that trickles down across the entire part of the company. So that way everyone's kind of walking towards the same direction. Yeah, of course, teams get off track or get diverted here or there, but at least there are, we have a North Star, we have a point and direction where we're trying to head towards.
Sure. And that's where like metrics or alerts, like those things make a ton of sense because there's a lot of meaning behind the information, right?
Yeah.
Like the key point in here though is if I have a system, which we now have, that you can implement a scanner API and collect the information of what is the activity of everyone in this ecosystem, because if you're getting this data, it comes from this ecosystem. And if your job is these, managing the data in these 5 reports, and you haven't logged into this system or looked at any of these reports in the last month, and you're arguing with me that like it's some other problem, I can tell you it's not the problem. The problem is you're not doing your job, right? And it's not a finger pointing thing, but it is certainly systems of
with that when you
record
talk to people
that are absolutely such that it's like we know that you aren't like looking at the information you would need to in order to like help our customer or like make these decisions, because you've been told this is where you go, this is the stuff you need to look at, here's what we're refreshing on a daily basis. And with subscriptions or these things, you have no idea. They just get sent, right? And then it's like, well, you got that, right? It is absolutely
because of that,
it gets to the point where you don't know like what's going on. Yeah,
because of the amount, the technology that people are have to use every day, the different sources, the minimal effort for communication of data, minimal value. if we want to be effective with our alert subscriptions or us being proactive, there has to be the thought and the system behind it. Where if I'm going to create this scorecard, rather than just clicking subscribe to report, blast an email, you're going to get that same value out of it.
Exactly.
Compared to now, there have to be a conscious effort of what are you sending, how are you sending it, where are you sending it to, and all you can do that now. Like that's all available within the Power Platform, so there's no reason not to. But you have to plan it out. Like who's going to get this? What are they going to get?
Yes.
And where are we going to deliver it to them? So you're thinking about the culture, but you're also thinking about you have to think about the systems that they're using. But it requires the thought. It requires the planning beforehand.
I'd agree with that as well. Well, I think we've burned through a perfectly good hour of this. I don't know. Maybe we should go through. I think you're kind of going through final thoughts already, Seth. Maybe we should kind of wrap here and kind of wind things down here a bit. But I think this has been a great topic. I thank you very much. The chat has been very much very engaged. Really good comments there as well. So thank you all very much on the chat. If I had to roll this up, right, again, my kind of final thoughts here, I think subscriptions are a value add, right? I think they're clearly meeting, my opinion here, I think they're meeting a need from legacy tools. That's just a gap. It's a feature gap filler, right? I don't see Microsoft having a lot of things on roadmaps of like very special things they're doing with subscriptions, right? There's not a whole lot of road mapping subscription-based features coming up. However, I do think the idea of alerts is much more powerful. And so I think being able to incorporate those, and I think honestly, your observation at the end there, Seth, right? The challenge of organizations is focusing on things that matter, period. Like that is why this technology exists. And we're going through an evolution here, I think. I think we're seeing the literally the world changing with the tools and having to adapt. And we're going to continually see as the next generational workforce jumps into this space. I look at my kids already. They already love data. They already like looking at computers and apps and things. It's just more fluid to them. So as we bring up, like, we grew up when the internet was starting. Like, we had a dial-up. We knew what that means. Like, so the evolution that's here. We have people now. My kids, particularly, like they've always had the internet. It's always been there. There's this unlimited knowledge base. So now that it's going to be a lot more of figuring out what is the most important things to focus our time on. Anyways. Any other final thoughts before I wrap here? Tommy, any final thoughts you want to put in there, or any other stuff you want to add in?
I would say the biggest thing is there may be some use.
You said
cases
no, but then you added something. So yes,
I always say no for thanks.
Okay. Go ahead.
I completely agree. So the biggest thing I would want to say is I still think there is a place for report subscriptions in the beginning of an adoption strategy to deliver the data, but I think there's a better case utilizing the metrics, utilizing that with Power Automate. Again, there's more learning involved to do it.
I like that.
Once you can really set it up, my gosh, what a powerful feature and custom feature that can really deliver something unique, can deliver it to where people are at. And there's so many other use cases for that when we're talking about alerts. I wouldn't do alerts in a dashboard. I think dashboards to me they're done. They're dead. So, but I think utilizing the scorecard and utilizing Power Automate, that's the technology that we have. That it's not email anymore. It's utilizing what automation tools are out there.
Yeah. Cool.
I think condensed, ultimately time is more valuable. Right, focus in the right places is what we all need to do better, right? And reducing the noise as opposed to increasing it.
Yeah,
I think there's always a better way to focus people in the right places for data outside of like big spam subscription type things. But I would also argue builders need to think about how we are delivering reporting systems instead of using even an easy button adoption of like throwing subscriptions at people, because I'd rather do that pre-planning and get the tracking and make sure that those individuals are engaging in the places in their reports that they need to be, rather than creating a system outside of where I have visibility, because that ultimately drives the health of reporting and data engagement in the organization.
I like your point there, Seth. I think to me, again, as I've been looking at this with multiple customers, it's continually becoming more and more important that monitoring about what people are doing in the Power BI environment indicates a lot of where you are data culturally.
It's health, right? The health of reporting.
It's literally the health meter, right? And previous to this, maybe we had it, maybe we weren't using it as well. But I think the fact that this tool is so, sharing centric, right? It is self-service based. The idea is it's made to be self-service in that respect. It's going to be important for us as BI leaders to continually evaluate where are we at, what's adding value, what's not, and adjusting. Yeah, I really like that.
100%. And all of those, that health factor allows you to drive in the right directions, right?
Yes.
You have problems continually coming up, right? And the BI team knows that there's 3 reports that solve that problem.
Yep.
Do those people making the decisions know about them though? Maybe there's a breakdown in our development of those reporting, the communication of where and how that access, right? Like that to me.
What's in the report? How to read this report?
Right.
There's standpoint.
There's a symptom in our organization. Can we figure out like how to solve the problem, or are we just addressing the symptom every time somebody solves that? And you can't do that.
I love that.
Unless you have like an understanding of that engagement with people. And subscriptions is just one of those things where, yeah, we can see a bunch of people are subscribed, but like we don't know if they're using it.
Yeah. So. Agreed. Awesome. Well, with that, I appreciate everyone's time. We thank you so much for listening. Our only ask, if you hearing this wonderfully free podcast with minimal advertisements here, is if go ahead and do us a favor. If you like this topic, if you like what we're talking about here, please go ahead and share this with somebody else. Let somebody else know that you enjoyed the podcast. You had some interesting thoughts here that were relevant to you in your workspace. And where else can you hear about the podcast, Tommy?
You can find them anywhere they're available: Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Make sure to subscribe, and you can look at all of our previous episodes. You want to join the conversation live, you can do so every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central.
As I was typing up the description for this one, I looked at it.
I got
wow,
Chat GPT.
We're on episode 176. I think we're almost to 200 episodes. There's almost 200 hours of us blabbering about Power BI. That's crazy to me. I mean, it's amazing to make nothing out of thin air. So
pretty good at it.
We're pretty good at it. Excellent. Thank you all very much for listening. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.